Non-probability sampling. Time ago we discussed about probability sampling. Now continue with non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling is often associated with case study, research design, and the qualitative research. With regard to the latter, case studies tend to focus on small samples and are intended to examine real-life phenomena, not to make statistical inference in relation to the wider population. A sample of participants or case does not need to represent or random, but a clear rationale is needed for the inclusion of some cases or individual rather than others. There are types of, as I said before, there are types of non-sampling. The first one is purposive sampling, and the quota sampling, and the convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is used because it is quick, inexpensive, and convenient. Convenience sampling are used for certain purpose, and they required very little planning. The procedure is casual and easy, relatively to random sample. Construct using any available participants with random sampling. When we are focusing for convenience sampling, the procedure or the construct is easy, just using available participants, where you must have a well-designed, and defined population. Construct a little and list of members of population. The third one is sample random from the list. Number 4, construct and use as many individuals from the list as possible. Convenient sampling requires at least 5 effort and less. Quota sampling is a non-random sampling technique in which participants are chosen on the basis of predetermined character. The other one is snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is a non-random sampling method that is used a few cases to help encourage other cases. This approach is mostly applicable in a small population. And it helps for increasing professional and society. The purposive sampling, the fourth one is purposive or judgmental sampling, is a strategy in which particular setting persons or events are selected deliberately in order to provide important information that cannot be obtained from other choices. It is where the researcher includes case or participants in the sample because they believe that they warrant inclusion. Let us see the determination of sample. How to determine the sample? We determine the sample based on the resource available, and we determine the sample based on the nature of the study. We determine the sample based on method of sample followed, and we determine the sample size based on the nature of the respondents and the field of study. When we are using statistical consideration during determination of sample size, we have to know the nature of population, the degree of accuracy, and the degree of confidence. Let us see data collection. One of the most popular and widely used techniques of data collection used in the field of survey is the questionnaire or scheduled. A questionnaire is a form containing a series of questions and providing space for the replies to be filled in by many respondents itself. It is maybe face-to-face types of questionnaire, interview questionnaire, observation, and so on. Steps to develop questionnaires. There are 7 steps. The first one is decide what information is required. Before you collect information and distribute questionnaires, you have to decide what type of information you are needed as a researcher, which is related to your objective. The second step, make rough list of the questions. You have to write and list the questions. A list is now made of all the questions that could go into the questionnaire. The aim that this stage is to be as comprehensive as possible in the list and not to worry about paraphrasing the question. The third steps of developing questionnaire is refine the question paraphrasing. Refine the question. Number 4, develop the response format. Develop the response format. Number 5, or the 5th step, is put the question into appropriate sequence. Appropriate sequence. First, second, third, 4, 5, 6. Just sequential. Number 6, or step 6, is finalize the layout of the questionnaire. Number 7, or step 7, is pre-test and revise. Pre-test and revise. The final steps is to test the questionnaire, whether the questionnaires are right or wrong, or relevant or unrelevant, favored or unfavored. It is usually necessary to carry out more than 10 to 20 interviews in a plot because the aim is to make sure that it works. Not obtain plot result, but it helps if you have 10, more than 10, and less than 20 questions. It is so good research. Let us see the interviews. Interviews became necessary when researchers feel the need to meet face-to-face with individuals, to interact and generate ideas in the discourse that broader on mutual interest. Specifically, with research interview, the researcher has to identify a potential source of information and structure the interpretation in a manner that will bring out relevant information from his respondent. Apart from face-to-face interview, they can also be conducted over the phone or a computer terminal via video conference and technology. Interview range from formal to less formal and to complete informal interview. There are 4 main kinds of interview: structured interview, unstructured interview, non-directive interview, and focus or directive interview. Structured interview. The structured interview are formal because sets of question noun interview questionnaire are posed to each interview, visited, and the response are recorded. And structured interview. And structured interview is less formal. Look, structured is formal and structured is less formal type, in which also sets questions may be used. The interviewer freely modify the sequence of the questions. You can easily modify your question, but the structured one you cannot modify. Always ensure it is an interview part or the interview is structured. When you come to the unstructured, it is less formal. Easily you can modify it. This is conducted in what is characterized as open situation. Because there is unstructured is looks like open. Structured is open-ended. The third one is observational. It is one of the instruments for data collection. Observation is one of the very important methods for obtaining comprehensive data in a qualitative research, especially when a composed of both oral, visual data became vital to the research. By the use of observation strategy, researchers are able to obtain first-hand information about the objectives. Eventually, happenings like festival. Let us see chapter 4. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is about the source of data. Chapter 4 is about the source of data. The source of data. From where a researcher collects data. Data is the basic input to any decision process in the business, research, management, operation, in any field. General consideration in data collection includes as basic concept. The first one is, as I said before, data could be collected through observation, watching people, watching organization. The other one, data can be collected through questionnaires, ask people, orally and written. The other one is interview, ask people orally and through telephone and other related electronics. Test and scale and document this as a source of data. There are two types of data, primary data and secondary data. Primary data is the first-hand information collected directly from the research work or the research area under consideration. Primary data can be collected through the following methods. 1. Through observational method. 2. Through personal interview. 3. Through telephone. 4. Through mail survey. 5. Through questionnaires. Secondary data is the data collected from sources which have already been created for the purpose of first-time use and future use in the previous time. Sometimes more accurate data can be obtained only from the secondary data. There are two types of sources of secondary data, internal and external sources, which are going to be dealt with under type of secondary data later on. Let us see the internal source. Internal source of data mean internal organization, source for examine. Maybe departmental, maybe production summary, maybe financial and accounting report, maybe marketing and sales studies. These are internal. Mostly it focuses on the internal organization, on organization under the study areas or some particular organization or agencies. When we see the external is the outside body, the outside of the organization. External is the data collected out of the organization. Internal is the data collected from the organization. Internal or information collected from the organization. External information out of the organization. In addition to internal source, other sources of information is known as external. There are 5 categories of external sources. 5 categories of external sources. For example, books, periodicals, government document or publications. 4, variety of material, reference books or publications. 5, publication of trade association and magazines or newspaper, annual report, and so. These are the external resource of data or external resource of secondary data. Statistical guide and the data sources are also the external one, and consensus data. Let us see the characteristics of secondary data. The researcher must be very carefully in using secondary data. He must or she must make meaning security, because it is just possible that secondary data may be unsuitable or may be inadequate in the context of problem which the researcher wants to do or wants to study. A researcher has to identify it is reliability of the data, suitability of the data, and adequacy of the data. Let us see types of observation. Observation, as I said, it is part of data collection and the source of data collection. The first one is simple or uncontrolled observation. As it is mentioned in your module, observation is simple or uncontrolled, systematic or uncontrolled. Maybe observation is mass, large. Let us see chapter 5. In chapter 5, when we see chapter 5, it is about data presentation and data analysis. Before I start chapter 5, I will revise chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. In chapter 1, we discuss about the concept of research, the type of research, and the research outline, and the objectives of the research, the qualities of the research. In chapter 2, already we discussed about research problem, that means research topic, literature, proposal, and components of proposal. In chapter 5, a large part. In chapter 3, the large part of this course, we discuss about research design, measuring, scaling, and types of sampling, probability, non-probability. In chapter 4, we discuss about data and source of data and way of data collection. Let us see chapter 5 now. Chapter 5, how we determine and discussing and interpreting and analyze the collected data. The following are the stages through which the raw data must be processed in order to ultimately deliver the final product. 1. Editing. Editing means to look for and remove any error, incompleteness, or inconsistency in the data. The editor is responsible for seeing that the data are as accurate as possible, consistent with other facts secured, formally entered, uniformly entered, as complete as possible, acceptable for tabulation, arranged to facilitate conducting and tabulation with regard to point or stage at which editing should be done. Coding is referred to the process of assigning numbers or other symbols to answer, so that responses can be put into a limited number of categories or classes. Coding is necessary for efficient analysis, and through it, the several replies may be reduced to a small number of classes which contain critical information required for analysis. Coding decision should usually be taken at the designing stage of the questionnaire. You have to code. Number 5, classification. Most research study result in a large volume of raw data which must be reduced into homogeneous group for getting characteristics are placed in one class, and in this way the entire data get divided into number of groups or classes. The fourth one is tabulation. When we are talking about data presentation, editing, coding, classification, and the tabulation. Tabulation means you just put into the table. When a mass data has been assembled, it becomes necessary for the researcher to arrange the same in some kind of concise and logical order. This procedure is referred to as tabulation. This tabulation is the process of summarizing raw data and displaying the same in compact form for the further analysis. In the broader sense, tabulation is an orderly arrangement of data in columns and rows. Tabulation is essential because of the following. One, it conserves space and reduces explanatory and descriptive statement to a minimum. It facilitates the process of comparison. Tabulation. It facilitates the summation of items and the detection of errors and omissions. It provides a basis for various statistical computations. Elements of analysis. When we analyze the data, After data collection, proper tools and techniques should be used for classification and analysis of data. Tools of data classification. 1. Frequency distribution. Cumulative frequency distribution. Relative frequency distribution. Chart. Bar chart. Stacked bar chart. Histogram. Frequency polygamy and the ogive curve are the elements of analysis. What are the types of data analysis? There are types. Analysis may be categorized as descriptive analysis and the inferential analysis. Descriptive analysis is largely the study of distribution of one variable. Measures of dispersion. How the items in a series are distributed and how they are scattered. Measurement of dispersion are range and the semi-inquiral range, mean deviation and standard deviation. Measure of sequence. The data in a frequency distribution may fall into symmetrical and asymmetrical pattern. The measure of the direction and degree of asymmetry are called measure of sequence. In symmetrical distribution, mean, median, and the mode between any two of this value indicate the extent of sequence. Thus, measure of sequence 1, mean, mode, mean, median, mode. Chapter 6. When we see chapter 6, this chapter is the last chapter. This chapter is near to the end chapter. It is about data presentation in the research report. As I mentioned when we start this course, the first one is basic concept of research, definition of research, research design, source of data collection, chapter 5, data presentation and discussion. At the same time, chapter 6, data discussion or data interpretation and research reporting. On page 74 of your module, a researcher has to practice two critical issues. The first one is data interpretation. The other one is reporting. The first one is when the ultimate goal of research process and a person start to present and interpret, it should be title page. Title page should be include 4 items. The title of report, the date, for whom it is prepared, and by whom it is prepared. Number 2, executive summary. An executive summary can be served 2 purposes. It may be report in miniature or covering all of the aspects in the body of the report in abbreviated form. Or it could be a concise summary of major findings and conclusion, including recommendation. Number 3, table of contents, including major titles, and subtitles with their respective page numbers. If there are many tables, charts, or other exhibits, they should be listed in the content. The fourth is acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge the organization that helps you, or the persons, peoples, groups, individuals contribute in writing of your research. When we come to the main part of the research, when you represent or present and defend your research, the first one is introduction. The introduction prepares the reader for the report by describing following parties: problem of statement, research objective, background, and two types of preliminary result of exploration from experience survey and other sources and secondary data. The other one, when you present and report your research in the short form, you have to present your research methodology at least in 5 ways or 5 steps. It is design, sampling design, research design, data collection, data analysis, and your limitation. The fourth part of this chapter is that findings. This is generally longest in the main section of the report, which should be an organized presentation of result and not a cluster of porous charts and tables. The other one is conclusion. The other one is conclusion, summary of conclusion, recommendation, appendix, bibliography. Bibliography is a list of reference books or any other material used in the research work, with full description of author, title of the book, material, and research of publication. Let us summarize the courses. Number 1, what is research for you? Number 2, how do you understand research? Number 3, what are the types of research? Number 4, how can you identify your research problem? Number 4, how can you identify your research problem? Number 5, please list and describe components of proposal and its definition. Components of proposal and its definition. Mention types of sampling. Number 6, sampling techniques. Mention sampling techniques. Number 7, what is research design? What is research design? Number 8, what is data source? What does it mean, source of data? What does it mean, source of data? Number 9, mention the 2 types of source of data. Number 10, how can you present your research findings? How can you present your research findings? Number 11. What is scale measuring? Scale measuring. What is scale measuring? What is scale measuring? Number 12. Mention types of write down. Mention types of interviews and its differences. Thank you very much for your listening. I'm Gofere. If you have any question, you can call me by cell phone number 09 11 74 74 7752 ጥያቄ ወይም አስተያየት ቢኖራችሁ 0911 74 77 52 መደወል ትችላላችሁ። Thank you very much. Have good time with the course. I'm finished.